So the question for today is, who takes you home after surgery when you live alone? And this has happened to me, and I've had to impose on people to pick me up, and I really hated every minute of it. So what happens when you need surgery, you live alone, and the hospital tells you that you can't go home by yourself? Who will pick you up? I mean, you could lie and tell them you have someone, but sometimes you need someone to sign you out. You can't sign yourself out. And then what do you do if the doctor tells you somebody has to stay with you after your surgery, either for a few hours or overnight, to make sure you're okay? And because when you live alone, this can become a surprisingly big problem. And I've had comments on my channel about this exact question. So here's what I found out when I did the research. So you don't need a husband, an adult child, a relative, or even a friend. You can actually hire someone to do this for you. And I want you to do your own research and interview your own people and make your own determination. I don't want you going just by what I'm saying. So until I started researching it, I didn't know these services existed. So I'm Leanna, and on this channel, we talk about the realities of living alone as a woman, the good parts, the difficult parts, and how we build a life that works without assuming there's always going to be someone there to help us. And today we're talking about surgery. And the first question is, why couldn't you just call an Uber? And I've already know this from having surgery and the doctor telling me, no, you can't have an Uber pick you up. So it's not necessarily that you don't have transportation. It's just that the medical facility itself may require a responsible adult to pick you up, and someone that is either medically trained or knows you. So if you've had anesthesia or sedation, you may not be permitted to simply walk out of the facility and get into an Uber and go home alone. I guess there are federal requirements for many ambulatory surgical centers that say patients generally must be discharged in the company of a responsible adult unless the physician makes an exception. This is much more than I need somebody to drive me home, right? You may actually need someone the medical facility considers a responsible adult who can accompany you through discharge. This is where my research got interesting, because there are actually companies that provide people to do exactly that. You can hire a medical procedure companion, and that's a term you'll want to remember, medical procedure companion. You may also hear the term medical escort. You may also hear the term medical escort, surgery escort, responsible adult service, or post-surgical companion. One company I found is called myfredy, myfredy.com. And this isn't simply a transportation company. According to the company website, they provide vetted, professional, non-clinical medical procedure companions. Depending on the service you arrange, they can meet you at the facility or pick you up. They can remain available while you're having your procedure. They can help with the discharge process. They can receive your discharge instructions, and they can provide private transportation back home or to a hotel, whatever you're using. They also offer additional non-medical aftercare if you need someone to remain with you after you get home. And I want to say something really important before we go any further. I'm sharing these companies because I found them while researching options for people who live alone. I'm not personally endorsing them, and I haven't personally used them. Please do your own research before hiring any company. Come on, y'all, do your own research. Check reviews, verify credentials where applicable, and ask exactly what services are included. Confirm the cost, and most importantly, make sure your hospital or surgical facility or doctor will accept that particular service for your discharge. Policies can vary from one facility to another, so use this video as a starting point for your own research, not as a substitute for talking directly with your healthcare provider and your healthcare team. Think about how useful that could be. Maybe you're having a colonoscopy, cataract surgery, dental surgery, or another outpatient procedure involving sedation. You don't necessarily have to start calling everybody you know asking, can you take an entire day off or away from your life and take me to surgery? You don't have to impose on other people. There may be a professional service you can hire instead. I'm putting the link to My Freddie in the description below, but there's something important you need to do before hiring anyone. Ask the medical facility if they will accept a professional medical procedure companion. Just don't assume that they're going to allow that, okay? So now we get to the second problem. Because getting through your front door isn't necessarily the end of this situation, right? What happens when the surgeon says someone needs to stay with you tonight? Or you need somebody with you for the first 24 hours after your surgery? That's a completely different need. And that's where I would start looking at private duty home care agencies or post-operative caregivers. These are generally non-medical caregivers who can potentially help you with things like getting around the house safely, preparing something to eat, getting a bath, and getting dressed after your surgery, and maybe even help you with medication reminders. Maybe some light housekeeping, general companionship, and even an overnight stay that gives you assistance so you can get up in the night if you need to go to the bathroom or something like that. And one company you may already recognize is called Visiting Angels. It was new to me, but apparently it's common. Some Visiting Angels locations provide recovery care following surgery, and services can include things like transportation, mobility assistance, meal preparation, medication reminders, and personal care assistance, helping you get a bath, helping you get dressed. And then there's another question you need to ask. Can their caregiver satisfy your surgical facility's responsible adult discharge requirement? Because those are not necessarily the same thing. So I'm also going to put the Visiting Angels link in the description as well. Let me make this really simple. If you live alone and you're planning surgery, there are potentially 3 separate problems to solve. Number 1 is transportation. How are you physically getting to and from the medical facility? How are you getting there? How are you getting back home? Number 2, a responsible adult or medical escort. Who will the medical facility actually release you to? Right? You got to make sure you have someone if that's necessary. And then number 3 is at-home care. Do you need someone with you for 4 hours, 8 hours, overnight, or possibly longer after this procedure? 3 things are not necessarily provided by the same company. And I think that's one of the most important things I learned researching this. Don't just arrange a ride and assume you're finished. So if you live alone, especially if you're a woman over 50, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel because these are the types of things that I want to talk to you about. Not just how wonderful independence can be, but how do we actually make independent living work? Because most of the time there is a solution. Sometimes we just have to know that solution exists and where to look for it. Here's exactly what I would do before your procedure. Call your surgeon or your surgical facility, tell them I live alone and I don't have a family member available to accompany me to the procedure, do you allow a professional medical procedure companion or paid caregiver to serve as my responsible adult? Then ask, does that person have to remain at the facility during my procedure? And then how long does someone need to remain with me after I get home? And your final question is, do you have medical escort or home care companies that you already work with or recommend? Last question could make this whole process much easier because your medical facility may already know companies that meet its requirements. And here's something else I've been thinking about. If you live alone, don't wait until you need surgery to figure this out. Create a little file, call it "If I Need Surgery" or something, whatever works for you, and put a few phone numbers and websites in it. Find out which home care agencies operate where you live. Find out whether there are medical procedure companions available in your area. And find out what your insurance will and won't cover. Because when you're already nervous about having a surgery, that's probably not when you want to start frantically searching for help, right? And this brings me to the bigger reason I wanted to make this video. Living alone does not mean doing everything alone. I think sometimes we confuse the two. If my plumbing breaks, I hire a plumber. If my truck needs work, I hire a mechanic. And if I have surgery and I need somebody to safely get me home and stay with me, I can hire help for that too. You can build support without having a spouse or adult children living in your house. And I think we're going to see more and more services developed for people who live alone, because there's so many more of us now living alone than ever before. Millions of Americans do this now. And that includes a very large number of older women. And our healthcare system needs to recognize something. Not everybody has a spouse sitting in the waiting room. So if you live alone and you've been worrying about having some type of surgery, no matter what type of surgery it is, and you're thinking, who's going to take me home or get me there? Don't assume you're out of options. Start by calling the medical provider. Ask whether they accept a professional medical procedure companion. Find out exactly what their discharge requirements are, and if you're going to need help once you get home, arrange that too. Living alone shouldn't mean I can't get the medical care I need. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had surgery while living alone? And how did you get home? And who helped you afterward if you needed it? Please put it in the comments, because your solution might help another woman who has absolutely no idea how she's going to do this. And if you're building a life on your own terms, subscribe and please watch the next video, because we're going to keep figuring out the practical side of living alone together. I'll see you in the next one. And links for a lot of what I talked about in the video are in the description. Thanks again, and have a great day.